Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to PSGL. George Morgan here, your commentator, alongside me, TK, who is going to be rounding off the season with me.
Down the inside,
absolutely impossible scene.
This is for the win between these two.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
He needs to get it done now.
Blakey will dive to the inside.
We're robust. We got our elbows out.
Ronar takes the lead.
Because here comes Alfie Butcher.
Can't really complain with that one.
It's not going to be easy. The pressure is on, of course.
Yana Watmere is your champion.
Can't really complain with that one.
It's not going to be easy. The pressure is on, of course.
Yana Watmere is your champion.
All right, let me just get the right one, and there we are. Welcome everyone, and a very, very warm welcome. Good evening here to PSGL. We were supposed to be on break week, but that's not the case. And here we are. There we are. Welcome everyone, and a very, very
Yes, we are
good evening.
here. We are back for what should be, at least, hopefully, a completed Texas Grand Prix, of course, here. It should be a very interesting evening. Of course, a lot of these drivers have already had laps around the circuit in quali and race trim against one another, so they'll probably know who to expect to perform. Of course, me and you weren't here last week, so we are going into this pretty much blind with the fact of we beware. But the drivers, they've had that little bit extra practice, you could say, from that lobby last week, so actually see a bit of a tighter grid here this evening.
Everything seems to be a little messed up at the moment.
Oh.
I'm not sure what is going on. Let me just double check that.
Of course, the break week, the gremlins. The gremlins of the week we're not supposed to be here start to attack. But yeah, of course, we are the only tier here this evening, so no F2, no F4. Nobody else is around. It's just me and Myth here this evening having to join you for this lobby restart. So if the lobby goes again, if we do have another issue, we have a different lobby host this evening, of course. Thank you for Thomas Setualaya, who has gracefully opted to be the lobby host. But if there is another lobby issue after this evening, I think then it's half points awarded. And then we shall be going into the next race, because there's no time to reschedule. We've got to go straight away. But anyway, I think the drivers are getting ready in the lobby. Hopefully those issues are fixed, Myth. Is it looking good? Oh no. Oh no, the issues are not looking good. Oh. Is it the Discord audio potentially? Right. Well, this has got off to a brilliant start. Of course, it shows that even we can have issues, not just the lobby, in previous weeks. The drivers are also just loading into qualifying at the moment. While Myth is trying to sort out these issues, I'll talk you through the current look at the standings. It's Gabor Jontos, who has taken back-to-back victories in Australia and Belgium, looking untouchable at the top of the field. He's 14 points clear. Second, then we have Igor Pazeshki, who's a further 4 points back from Largo. With a 10th and a 2nd place last time out. Then it's Dimas, who after a strong Belgium Grand Prix, I think actually did pick up a penalty. Yes, he finished 4th, picked up a 5-second time penalty, demoted him all the way down to 10th place. Then we have Dennis Lamrock 6th, Rosen 7th, 8th is Thomas Setualaya, Carlos Galindo in 9th, and 10th is Valentino Labella, with Zalan Bieda in 11th. And finally, rounding out our point scorers is Iona Martin. So 12 drivers so far this season scoring points. The rest of the drivers haven't scored just yet. And we are going to be heading into qualifying ever so shortly. Any news, Biff, on if it's looking better? No. Yes, I don't think he was. So the man second in the standings now has that attempt to, of course, go again and now be able to actually attend this week's session. Of course, a few drivers that were here last week, they haven't been able to attend. They may have already had plans for the break week, and it's unfortunately just not gone their way. But at least for Francesco Largo, being technically, well, being in that championship fight, of course, it's still early days in the terms of the championship. Being second place as well, exactly what he needs, and it means he don't miss out on crucial points at all, does it, Myth? So he's actually been able to be here, attend, and even if it's minimal points, it's still some good points to his championship challenge. Yes, Zalan Bieda is now on a lap time. He's just heading through the first sector. Hopefully this sounds all good to you, Myth, and you're not getting blasted by two of me in your ears, and it's all good. Oh, no. Zalan Bieda is the first one round, so he's currently in that Alpine, down in 17th, of course, with how the game's placed him. But he's heading now into the middle sector split. He's set a 1 minute point 5. That's not seeming to be too shabby. That seems to be a decent opening lap time here for the Alpine as he now makes his way through turn 15. Of course, slowly bring that power back up. Don't want to drop the rear on exit. Keep a tight and narrow line into the triple right-hander. You don't want to swing yourself out wide and then move yourself in. You don't want to lose out on critical lap time before you head into the penultimate corner, but taking a bit too much inside curb there for Bieda. He unfortunately invalidates. What would this have been? I think a low 30 would have been a strong one. A 30.4, I think that would have been a very solid banker lap. But Dennis Langrock is now next to the line. Yeah, nicely done so far from Victor Vidler. Oh, Jeremy Gallonay to the line. And, these issues
Okay,
just
now
seem
it's
to be...
fixed.
Okay, good. There we go. Everything that can fall apart on us at the minute. It is falling apart. Stephen Vasso now goes to the top of the times. He beats his teammate Victor Vidler by 700ths of a second. Jeremy Gallané went to 9th. He's just been displaced. Dave Goodbaddy, I think, has just moved himself up into 7th. No, it was not. It's one of the kick Saubers of Lucas Basner moving themselves up into 8th place. Is anybody else on a lap time? Kasper Flack, no. Shontos, no. I think that is going to be it for these first runs so far. And it's a McLaren at 1-2 at the moment here in the Lone Star State, and they've got quite a comfortable margin over the rest of the field. 2 tenths clear of the closest man in third, Daniel Coyer.
Yeah, it's a great lap by Vasso indeed. That so far championship contenders have been dropping the ball. Francesco Lago, track limits. Gabor Shontos, our championship leader, track limits. And Alexander Dimas setting the slowest lap time so far. So no great work by them just yet, but those were our first runs. It looks a little bit cloudy up ahead, but judging by how the drivers are currently, I don't think there's anything to worry about pertaining to the rain.
No, I don't think there's anything to worry about at all either. They're all very calm, very chill. They didn't just barrel roll out the pit lane and just all come out in a single herd. They took their time, spreaded themselves out, and then were getting their laps underway. Of course, everybody's now going to be coming into the pit lane. Get ready for their next runs. And we'll be heading out for runs 2 of the lobby. And the first one to do that, I think, will be, yes, it will be Dennis Langrock, who's now trundling his way down pit lane, currently with a 30.4. If he wants to take provisional pole, we'll need to find around about 3.5 tenths of a second if he wants a somewhat healthier cushion than what he could have. But for Dennis Langrock, he is now going to be looking to try and get these second runs started off with a bang, and at least for him, try to maybe improve onto the front row of the grid.
That would be a great way to do, and it looks like 2 people have indeed exited that pit lane. Langrock that you're speaking of, but I hope to see a little bit of Tomas Kokeni. He said the fastest lap time in the race last time out, and that was 2 weeks ago, of course. But Dennis Langrock is currently in the lead pack, so we'll have to see how quick he can go in that kick Sauber. He's currently approaching the turn. That's turn 11, right, Max? I'm sorry, I'm completely lost at the moment.
Well, for Dennis Langrock, yes, it is turn 11, and then down the back straight into turn 12.
Yeah, I'm still struggling with the echo, so it seems like you guys can't hear the echo anymore, which is great. I can still hear the echo, so I'm mildly going insane, but I'll try to keep standing in that regard. But we'll focus on qualifying session, of course. We still have a good 10 minutes left on the clock. Langrock will be the first one to lead the second runners. Jontos and Lago are also out, and Dimas has also left pit lane. So we're going to see championship contenders make their second runs very soon.
Yes, we certainly are. Dennis Langrock taking a very, very slow approach to this one. Everybody seeming to do the same thing, so potentially just keeping those tyres cool at the start of your outlap, and for the start of your lap means they perform a little bit better later on by the end of your stint. He has just been overtaken by one of the Alpines. I think that potentially could be of Zalan Bieda. No, it is not. It's going to be of his teammate Tamas Kokeni, who is going to get us underway here for these second runs. So, for the Alpine driver, currently 6th fastest, only just behind the man he overtook, Dennis Langrock overall. Now, just setting himself up, taking a wide line on the exit of the final corner to get as much speed as you can down that main straight. And Tamas Kokeni will get us underway here for those second flying laps.
Yeah, and there he goes, diving into turn 1. The corner is also difficult, especially if you see it in real life. If you're going up the hill, you can't see where the corner is at all. So it's a blind braking and blind turning into the corner. Very, very difficult. But Tamas Kokeni is doing quite well so far as he approaches the end of the sector. He's down by about 600, so that's not too bad as he drops the ball there a little bit. Now, great exit moving up towards turn 11, and this is where you need to get your braking on point. Need to make sure you drive in well. Had a little bit of a spin, takes a lot of entry curve there, but seemingly doing well as he moves towards that back stretch. Now, DRS will be open in qualifying and in race even more as he uses a lot of that battery power. Now, hard braking into turn 12, take a lot of that curb. Make sure to clip it nicely on the inside. That was a great turn 12 from Kokeni, and he is up now by 300 on his own lap time. Great work so far, but he knows there's still extra improvement. Good approach. Further on, now in the final sector, the quick triple right-hander. There we go. 3 corners, half pass, and now it's just 2 to go. Make sure you don't pick up track limits here. Very aggressive, not perfect entry. So there will still be moments for improvement for Kokeni, but this could be at least a P4, and it is a P3. Great run by Tomas.
Not too bad at all. What about Langrock? Because he's now coming up to the line. He's found an improvement in the middle sector. He's now displaced the Hungarian for that 3rd place. Is that Daniel Koya up to the line? No, it's going to be his teammate of Tomasetto Alaya, who unfortunately hasn't set a lap time yet. Francesco Largo comes into pit lane. Unfortunate for him, for his chances in the championship. Casper Flack to the line. He goes up, I think, to 6th fastest. A brilliant lap time there from Casper Flack, setting the exact same lap time as Daniel Koya. Talking about Daniel, he's now going to be heading up to the start-finish line. Dimas now up into 2nd place, splitting the 2 McLarens. Here comes Daniel. He crosses the line, goes for fastest, finds some time on the lap. What about the 2 McLarens on their lap? Victor Vidler has invalidated. Stephen Vasso is just going to be exiting the final sector. Where's Gabor Shontos? He's invalidated. He's up and not been able to get a time on the board. So both of the top 2 in the standing struggling to get lap times done. Igor Brzezicki up into 4th place now. What's about, of course, Stephen Vasso on his lap time. And in that middle sector, he's up ever so slightly, but he's looking for a 30-0.
Yeah, Vasso is currently still on for it. 2 corners left on this quite long track. So he's now making his way around the final corner. This is where Jantos invalidated, and it's a provisional pole beaten by Stephen Vasso. Let's not forget, we saw the onboard of Gabor Jantos. He did get that invalidation, but had he not exceeded track limits in the final corner, that lap would have been a 1:30.102, which would have been enough for a P2. And I'll quickly tab out because I think I found the culprit to why I am hearing an echo.
Hopefully. That echo has been sorted. No one else on a lap time as it currently stands as well. So hallelujah, our technical gremlins have been fixed. But yeah, no one on a lap time at the moment. So it's still Stephen Vasso leading the way, but not from his teammate this time around. It is from Alexander Dimas, and it is actually ironically, Venturi Esports 1-2-3 in all this. Of course, they won't be working together. Maybe the 2 McLarens will win the race, but Dimas certainly won't be. But yeah, for Stephen Vasso, the Ukrainian, doing everything he possibly can to take this pole position. And that improvement has certainly put himself even further clear and even stronger heading into these final runs. Of course, we're going to see the exact same what just happened with those second runs, with this little bit of a lull period in the session, aren't we, Myth, where everybody now just gets ready for those final runs. But surprisingly, 2 of our championship contenders haven't set lap times yet. And still, on top of that, a further 3 drivers haven't set times either. So 5 cars yet to set lap times. And that now puts a lot of pressure onto their shoulders for these final laps.
Yeah, very unlikely, especially for Gabor Santos also. And he has been eyeing that pole position so far. The race wins haven't been a problem for him, but getting that pole position, he's been off by only the slightest of margins. Quick update on a little issue that we had. We had some issues with the OBS. That had to do with my computer messing up some settings. The fact that I was hearing an echo, turns out I was smart enough not to close down the YouTube stream, so that's why I had an echo. So silly things happen every now and then. Make sure you're always prepared, and guys, make sure to check if you have your own stream open or not when you're double checking if everything is working as it should be. Tomasetto Alaya is out in the meantime, by the way.
Yes, Tomasetto Alaya out on the circuit. He'll get the final runs underway. But yeah, learn from Myth, ladies and gentlemen, and just make sure you check everything, including your own stream yourself. But for Tomasetto, of course, one of those 5 yet to set a lap time. He's been struggling a little bit so far this season. He's had a 9th and a 5th place out in Belgium, of course, was helped to that 5th place due to him, of course, having such good pace in those wet weather conditions. And that is exactly why he won that race last season at Belgium, because of those wet weather skills he did have. But now we see the rest of the herd slowly make their way out onto the circuit. But something I did comment on just on those previous runs, but I find really interesting here at COTA is, unlike any other circuit here, Myth, these drivers take this outlap so slowly compared to stuff we see like last time out at Belgium. They were going quite quickly there, but here they're trying to keep every little ounce of performance in that tyre, probably just due to how many twisty corners there are.
Yeah, I think it has to do a lot with Sector 1 and also the first corner. The first corner is hard braking, so you need to make sure that you don't really overcook the tires, because if you have that hard braking zone, you might overshoot, make a mistake, or just cook the tires a little bit too much or too little, meaning that you're going to lose grip in that twisty first sector. So you need to make sure that you don't overheat them at all. They're a little bit lower in temperature than they normally are, and then you'll be able to go nicely through Sector 1. Let's go on board now with the Aston Martin driver, as our current host for tonight, Tomasetto Elia, is making his way around turn 1, attacking that very nicely, leaving a little bit of space on the exit. He has not been able to set a lap time just yet, so let's see how close he can come to all the other drivers and what time for that he will set in the first sector, leaving a lot of space on the inside. And so far it's a 24.4. I think that's slightly slower than I saw Tomas Kokeni do earlier on. Nonetheless, he gets a personal purple sector for himself. Now, hard braking into turn 11, braking just around the 70-meter mark, just missing that entry point on the apex, but coming around nicely. Now, down the backstretch, once again he goes, past our sponsor boards that we see left, right, and center, and in the back with the PSGL as we break into the 100-meter corner. That was very aggressive on the inside. Thankfully, no further track limits and a 1:0.3, so pretty decent run from Tomasetto, but he did have a little bit of wheel spin there coming out of turn 13. Now moving on then, triple right-hander, needs to keep it tight. He has to attack this corner hard to get a fast lap, but also needs to make sure he doesn't pick up track limits. That's a great second to last corner. Final corner then, attacking it nicely. Good on exit. Tomasetto Elia goes to provisional pole.
That's a spectacular lap time there from Tomasetto Elia. When the pressure is on, he is certainly delivered with that lap, even if it's not going to carry on for pole. Kasper Flack has unfortunately invalidated on his attempt. Now we've got Zalan Bieda coming up to the line. What is he going to do? Currently 12th fastest, a 30.3. Bieda, good enough for 8th. Still a very good improvement indeed. Gabor Jontos isn't going to set a lap, so your championship leader will start from the back of this field. Booper's actually got into a little bit of a scruffle there on the final lap, on his final lap with Alexander Dimas. There's been some contact between the pair there. And what about, of course, the two McLaren boys, Victor Vidler and Stephen Vasso? They're both in the middle sector, so they're still pushing on quite nicely. Kokeni moves himself up into third. Labella, who hasn't set a lap time yet, he's coming through the final corner. Jensen Ralston up into second. Labella into 14th. He's only found not too much time on his previous best, but Jensen Ralston with a brilliant lap time there. Daniel Koya now up to third. A brilliant outing so far for Aston Martin. But what about Vidler and Vasso? Vidler will be coming up to the line, and he's not found an improvement. What about Stephen Vasso? A slide out the final corner. He did improve, but barely misses out on pole position. Basler can't find the improvement, and Stephen Vasso might have just lost out on pole position thanks to a slide out of the final corner. The McLaren driver, who dominated that session, misses out thanks to an expert lap from Tomasetto Elia.
Yeah, that is so impressive. Invalidating your first couple of runs, going out as the first driver for your final run, and then just putting everyone in the dustbin and putting that car on pole. absolute masterclass from Tomasetto Elia, but we see how hard it is because the other drivers that didn't set a lap time, we have Francesco Lago in P14, Gabor Jontos in P19, our final slot on the grid after he didn't set a lap time, and also Alexander Dimas was not able to get too close. But it's pole position for this man that we see now being pushed back. It's Aston Martin on top, followed by a McLaren, but our top 3 contenders, Max, nowhere to be found.
No, nowhere to be found at all, of course. Let's run you through your grid for this evening. Tomasetto Elia starts on pole position from Stephen Vasso in second, Jensen Rowson in third, Daniel Koya fourth, Tamas Kokeni fifth, Dimas sixth, Vedler in seventh, disappointing after his first lap, Langrock eighth, Pazeshki ninth, and Galindo rounds out your top 10. Then we have Galanate, Bieda, Besa, Francesco Largo, the man starting second in the standings, not starting too much further up. I couldn't see the rest of the field in time. But crucially for Gabor Jontos, yes, Francesco Largo may not have been able to capitalise as much, but he's still starting from the back of the grid is Jontos, and Largo and also Pazeshki have everything to play for, and they could certainly make their way up a few places. It was Basner, Largo, Labella, Gabadi, Flack, and the 2 Red Bulls of Buba and Jontos. And Buba, of course, being involved in that late qualifying incident with Alexander Dimas. And apparently, after Buba already overtook Dimas at the final corner, he then let Dimas back by, and then the contact was made. So a little bit of a kerfuffle between those two, potentially causing Dimas to miss out on a high position.
Yeah, we'll have to see if we hear from him at all in that regards. We saw that Dimas was only slightly off his fastest lap time in Sector 1, but then in Sector 2, he dropped 3 seconds. So I think something must have happened in that middle sector. And in the meantime, we see everyone cheering. We see the sponsor board, Simmer Race setups, and of course ourselves here at PSGL. But we're currently seeing a bright sunny skies here in Texas at the Circuit of the Americas, and we should be moving over to our grid in a moment's notice, and we'll go underway with, well, a second attempt really for this race here at the Circuit of the Americas. The other grids have done it, but here we are with 3, 4, and 5 red lights. And off we go with a good start in the inside, but Tomasetto Elia has gone first. Also great move on the inside by Daniel Kyer, who's already looking to dive into the inside. 3 wide they go. It's a big send from Kyer, the Aston Martin, and he is fighting tooth and nail with Stephen Vasso. He is momentarily ahead, but Vasso has the inside for the next corner. Into the twisty section they go, and he's managed to make that move stick. Kyer from fourth up into second, as Rowson now is trying to battle his way through the McLaren that has lost 2 positions so far, but they're still staying side by side. But now he will finally have to yield, and that allows Tamas Kokeni to go for a double. Through goes Kokeni, and that's 2 guys in 1 corner. But the lead set, once again, a little bit of contact there, backing up everyone. There's massive contact now with Tamas Kokeni. I'm not sure who exactly is to blame for that, but so far a very eventful first lap. But Jontos still at 18th, Lago in 15th. The only man that's, well, yeah, Dimas has done a little bit better. He's currently in P7, but we have massive gaps for the first 2 drivers. The both pairing of Aston Martin already have a 1.5 second gap, Max.
Yeah, really good start for both Aston Martins, just being away from all that kerfuffle at the back there, as there's more contacts at the back of the field there. That's, I think, Dimas making his way through. Yes, it was on Carlos Galindo. Jensen Rowson falling backwards. Jeremy Gallané now side by side with Tamas Kokeni as they squabble over 9th place in the start of this race. A big wobble from Kokeni now means he's under pressure from Igor Pazeshki. Lanrock's into pit lanes, potentially picked up that front wing damage. And now we see side by side on the exit of the final corner, Kasper Flack and Igor Pazeshki all over this 10th place spot here. And look at that, Lucas Besa trying to thread it up the middle of the pair of them. Francesco Largo now looking to make his way through as well on now Zalan Bieda as they make their way down the hill. They're still side by side between Flack and Pazeshki as well. It's action everywhere you look here at the back of the pack. The top 12 all of the mediums, everybody else on the hard compound tyre. And it really has all kicked off on this opening lap. But again, a dream start for Aston Martin. Tomasetto Elia and Daniel Koya, they're going to be working together here to keep that gap to the 2 McLarens behind. And probably the biggest winner out of all of this when it comes to not being the Aston Martins is Alexander Dimas. Because yes, he may have been in that little bit of a kerfuffle, but he was able to make his way through the field, and he's up to 5th place as the two McLarens swap.
Yeah, two McLarens has swapped indeed. Kyra's gone extremely close to the back of Tomasetto Elia. In the meantime, Carlos Galindo finds himself ahead of his teammates, 6th and 7th for the Williams pairing. Tomas Kokeni has dropped down to P9, 4 positions lost, 6 gained for Kasper Flack, now in 11th for the Racing Bulls. And also 4 places gained for Gabor Santos, looking to make that a little bit more. Now, Max already spoke a little bit about the tires, and let's have another closer look. And indeed, it is exactly as you said it. Top 12 all on mediums, the rest on hard. So the drivers that had a rather scrappy qualifying session have opted for the alternative strategy. But it's good news that we have 6, now 7 drivers going for the exact same thing. That will potentially help further down the line when we're going to have our pit stops weekends. We are going to go back to our positions changed. We're going to go on board a little bit as well. If we have all the views again, there we go. And we see that Victor Whittler is still 1.4 seconds behind the Aston Martin pairing. But the closest anyone is to one another seemingly is Lucas Beisner, who's getting closer to the back of Kasper Flack for P11.
Yes, the scrap all kicking off behind Igor Pazeshki here. Of course, Santos has now made his way up to 15th, and he's had a slow start to this one, but being on those hards, it's going to be a long process ahead. It's all about going to be later on in this stint, and if he wants to go 3 for 3 this season, he will need a little bit of luck on his side. The two Aston Martins do a very routine switch down that back straight, as actually we see Kasper Flack overtake Igor Pazeshki, and now also Lucas Beisner as well. Beisner slotting himself just in front of the Haas, and then kicks out, but moves himself up into 11th, and Pazeshki drops down 2 places in the course of that one straight. Is he going to fight back? No, he is not. He's just going to sit behind Lucas Beisner for now. Of course, these guys need to close down that gap to Tamas Kokeni in front. The two McLarens leading that train. And thanks to not having DRS, Victor Biddle lost half a second to Elia and Koya. But the only issue is now here for the top 4 is that there's 2 teams with 2 drivers, and both teams are going to have one driver extend a lap extra, and that could potentially make those trains merge as those undercuts come into play.
Yeah, but so far they're doing very nice to leapfrog one another, not fighting each other at all, making sure that the gap is going to increase ever so much. The previous lap it was 1.5, now the gap's gone up to 2.0, so if they can keep this up, they can at least build a nice gap, and that will surely help them out once the pit stops are going to start. We're currently in lap 4 out of 28 as we're on board with Gabor Santos, who seems to be a little bit stuck here now in P15. And it also looks like Igor Pazeshki has a little bit less pace than all the other drivers. I wonder if he is indeed missing a front wing end plate. Was wondering if he had a little bit of damage because he lost lost the 1 second mark to Tomas Kokeni in the previous lap, got passed in the back straight by Flack and Beisner, and now is going to see Francesco Lago soar by, and it looks like he will have to replace that front wing as well when he comes into pit lane, because so far that's costing him about 8 to 9 tenths per lap, and that is not something you want when you are in a nice queue, because that means you're just going to lose the arrest to the man in front of you and then be overtaken instead.
Yeah, it certainly is, and of course, it also, especially around a circuit like like Texas, sorry, Stephen Vasso now picks up a 3-second time penalty, so that could be some drama added on to this race, a little bit of spice added on to this one. He's actually also got front wing damage, has the Ukrainian, so the man who started on the front row of the grid, he might have picked up some damage in that scrap we saw with Kokeni down at turn 11. And he unfortunately has picked up some front wing damage as well. But of course, you lose so much time, especially through Sector 1 in the final sector, because of course they're where that mechanical load is needed the most. Very high-speed corners, twisty corners as well. It's very technical. So you need that front wing, you need that aero balance. And unfortunately, they're just not going to be able to carry as much speed as the rest of the field. We're seeing that with Igor Brzezicki the most, with the fact he's just falling further and further and further back. And I think Vaso also got that penalty because he's got a little bit more understeer to the car as well. So, of course, 3-second time penalty now to Kasper Flak as Alan Bieda now makes his way through on Igor Brzezicki as they now make their way down this back straight. The Haas driver will be looking to fight back. Of course, the more cars in between himself and Shontos, and also between Largo and Shontos, as he's now going for a move, is the Hungarian to the inside, and the Haas driver has to lose a place to a championship rival. But for Francesco Largo, as long as he can keep a car between himself and Shontos here, Myth, that's exactly what he needs to do. And at the moment, it is working with Bieda, now the one in between the pair.
Yeah, and for everyone wondering how the top two have managed to pull almost 2-second gap, that was right at the start. We saw quite a lot of fighting happening from P2, 3 and onwards, and then in turn 11 there was a little bit of contact in which Tomas Kokeni was involved together with Steven Vaso, and that allowed the two Aston Martins to get away. Kaya had a great start, moving up from 4th all the way into 2nd after the first corner, so he had the best start out of the entire grid. Further down the line, yeah, Piasecki is now fully dropped down. He's now to be found in P17. Langrock already made a stop. He was also involved in the turn 11 lap 1 incident, costing him to make an extra pit stop. And if we currently check Flak, well, Boba has also gotten a 3-second time penalty, so there's already 3 drivers that picked up penalties for track limits. And Max, we're only on lap 8 out of 28 as Piasecki picks up another one.
Yeah, track limit penalties coming in thick and fast. These drivers obviously not behaving themselves and keeping their cars in between the white lines. As now we see Alexander Dimas. That's a crucial move now made on Steven Vaso. Of course, these two are also in that championship picture, so if they can score some big points, they could certainly see themselves climb further up the order in the standings. As Francesco Largo now gets past his teammate Kasper Flak. He's up to 11th place now. He'll be hunting down Lucas Baisner. I think that pendulum has now swung into the hard tyres' favour. They'll have more grip than the mediums. They're now the quicker tyre to be on at this stage of the Grand Prix. So expect Largo and, of course, Bieda, Shontos, Gabadi all to start to make their way through the medium runners. But the big issue is now as well is that Myth, not only is it Baisler in front, he'll probably defend, not aggressively, but he'll defend for his position, but he's still got to find 3 seconds to the train in front of him. I say he would defend, he doesn't defend, as Buba has unfortunately retired and left the session. Just been a horrid evening for him. But Francesco Largo, the big issue now on his hand, he's got to find 3 seconds to Tamas Kokeni over the course of the next few laps before these medium runners come into pit lane. That's going to be a really difficult ask, especially with everybody in front having DRS.
Yeah, and perhaps that might not be the strategy to go to even now. I mean, the medium runners are definitely going to drop a little bit now, so we're already in lap 7. Largo is the lead driver when it comes to the hard set of compounds, so that can help him a little bit. But of course, later on in the run, after we have our pit stops, he will have to close down another gap, and he will need the help of the drivers that are behind him. Let's take another look at our tires so we can see who exactly can help him out, because Baisner and Flak are 2 of the runners that are not going to be of any use for him after the pit stops have ended. For Zalan Bader, Gabor Jantos, Eve Gobadi, and Valentino Labella, those are the drivers that Largo needs to keep an eye on, and thankfully for him, they're all in the same DRS train that Largo is currently leading. But we saw in Sector 1, he managed to gain about 2/10. In the backstretch, he loses half a second, and now here in the 3rd sector, he's already gained about a 10th and a half. So he is definitely quicker than the drivers up ahead, but so far the DRS offset is too much for him to overcome, as he manages to get the gap down to 3.0, and it's a pit lane move for Lucas Baisner, and it looks like a couple of the medium runners are already going to come in, but I have to say, Max, a very early pit stop from Baisner.
It is very early. He's going to have to save those tyres quite a lot, as he, of course, will want to try and make those last all the way to the end. But he's going for that undercut, I think, for the cars in front. As long as he's able to stick with that train, he should be good to at least hang on to a few places. And he'll probably be hoping for a late safety car near the end so he can capitalise on that sort of reward his hard work. From Francesco Largo, yeah, as you mentioned, not really been able to make too many inroads. It's just that back straight with the DRS. It's so powerful and you gain so much more speed over someone who hasn't got it. that especially if you use battery as well, you just can't really find any time. All the time you make up in that first sector pretty much goes to waste, and we're going to see that once again. It's 2.5 seconds at the moment. DRS will be open for Tamas Kokeni. Carlos Galindo now gets past Stephen Vasso. He gets that move done quite nicely with DRS, but look at that. That gap between Kokeni and Largo instantly back up to 3 seconds. So it just shows that all that hard work you do in the first sector gets undone, and then you gain minimal tenths of a second through the final sector. So it's just chipping away at it ever so slowly, and he's not going to be able to catch up before the pit window as Kasper Flack and Jontos now go side by side out of 15, and the Red Bull driver makes it work.
Yeah, so far Lago has managed to gain about 3 to 4 tenths in that previous lap. The place where he gains the most time is Sector 1. He is very quick through there, and this is where the better tires are going to work out. A lot of drivers have come into pit lane, including our former race leader, Tomasetto Elia, although Kaya has taken over that lead before. The gap now to Vasso is about... Oh, it's coming down again, 2.5. But following with him is Victor Whitler and also Alexander Dimas. So they have gone for the early pit stops with Galindo and Flack. They should be quite well ahead of Lucas Beisner, and indeed they will be. Beisner has managed to dispatch Flack, so that's good news for him. But the gap to Galindo up ahead, 5.5 seconds, that will be too much to overcome. Tomasetto Elia still keeps a nice 2-second cushion to the McLaren driver in Whitler, currently in P11 and 12, so that's good news for him, and he will have to overcome a 6.7 gap to Valentino Labella, who has started on the hards and is still on those hards. But I think, Max, we can only imagine the runners up ahead are going to go for their pit stop soon, but in the meantime, Francesco Lago is eating away out of that gap that the medium runners have made, and it looks like the medium runners have to come in any moment now before the hards are just going to overtake them on track.
Yeah, I think they really have hit that cliff at the moment. In fact, they're all squabbling as well as Jensen Rowson and also Stephen Vasso getting into a little bit of a tussle. And just behind them as well is Gallané versus Kokeni. And Jeremy Gallané just coming out on top in that one. Is Daniel Koya coming into pit lane? Yes, he is. So the race leader is now in. The two Aston Martins have made their pit stop. Rowson stays out. So does Kokeni. No, it's only Rowson who stays out on the mediums. And Kokeni tried an overtake there on Jeremy Gallané. But let's see where these drivers come out in relation not only to Tomasetto Elia, but also Victor Vidler as well. Of course, the undercut being made by the McLaren on the Aston Martin of Daniel Koya. So as they trundle now down the pit lane, Victor Vidler making his way up into turn 1, and the Aston Martin does keep the jump, so the undercut's not worked in the sense of getting the overtake done, but he has now fought his way back into DRS range.
Yeah, this is not great news for the Aston Martins, who had a nice 2-second cushion. They sent Elian first as he was in second and didn't want him to get undercut by Victor Whitler. But as a result of that, Tomasetto now has a 1.2 second gap over Kaya. But Vidler is within 0.8 of Kaya, which means that the breakaway that they had after lap 1 has now been nullified, and we have 4 drivers within that first DRS train, just counting Kaya to be around that second mark of Elia. Whitler is in there. Dimas has done nicely as well to stay within there. He's now in 10th. But of course provisionally in P4, and the drivers up ahead really have to make their alternative strategy work, because so far it looks like our medium to hard runners have done a great job at that, Max.
Yeah, they certainly have done a good job of things. Victor Vidler just edging ever closer to the back of Koya, and on top of this, Dimas has also joined the party as well, so he's still stuck on the back of this train as Jensen Rowson stays out for another lap. He's really going for that overcut in this race, and is trying to put those newer hards that it will have in a few moments' time to as much use as possible. But with Francesco Largo breathing down his neck, I think we'll see him in the next few laps. It's actually, in the background, Victor Vidler's able to get past the first Aston Martin on the list of Daniel Koya. So we've had that swap for position, and that 1-2 that was looking so promising for the Aston Martin outfit. Unfortunately, Victor Vidler has now split the pair of them, and Koya is going to be coming under all sorts of pressure from Alexander Dimas.
Yeah, it's not good news for them at all. On the other hand, Tomasetto Elias still has that 2-second cushion. He has managed to gap a little bit there, nibble on an extra couple of tenths. So that is good news for him. But he will need to keep that gap to the McLaren driver with more drivers behind charging at them in the names of Kaya and of course Alexander Dimas as well. Let's go on board with the Mercedes man. Now he finished fourth last race, did get a penalty for contact that was made by Valentina Labella, who in turn got track limit penalty. That was removed pulse race, but Dimas getting a 5-second pulse race after Stuart's inquiry dropped him from 4th to 10th. So he'll be looking for revenge in that sense and trying to get closer to the likes of Lago and Jantos. Now they are currently ahead of them, but of course are only ahead because they are yet to make a pit stop, and the gap to them only about 5 to 6 seconds as Rowson now finally comes in. Lago has inherited that race lead. Zalen Bader is still out there, of course, with Jantos, Gobadi, and Labella. But I can only imagine that in about 5 laps time they are going to make their pit stop as well. I felt that the medium runners did come in awfully early. It looks like Rowson came in more around the time that you would expect, but with the other drivers going for the hefty undercut, it now means he finds himself behind Casper Flack. And Rowson was in P5 before, Flack was in P10 to 11 before, and he now hasn't even got the DRS onto him. So this shows how strong that undercut has been. And seeing that the gap with Kokeni is also about 4 seconds max, I think he's lost about 5 seconds staying out those 3 extra laps.
Yeah, he certainly has, as Galanate has picked up a 3-second time penalty to add misery to his race. But yeah, for Jensen Rowson, it was a bit of an unusual one. I think the plan seems to have always been to go long. That's why he's done it. But he's just going to have to try and use those fresher mediums to slice his way through... hard tires to just slice his way through the field in front. Of course, you can see that gap between Tomasetto Elea and Valentino Labella. That was 6 seconds only a few laps ago. It's now 3.4. So it just shows how much time you can lose, even with its hards to hards. Of course, those mediums would have been screaming in agony before Jensen Rowson came into pit lane. So he would have, of course, lost a little bit more time than the hard runners. As Dimas now picks up a 3-second time penalty. They really are coming in thick and fast, these penalties. And crucially for Dimas, someone battling for a potential podium, if not a race victory, if something happens to Elia ahead. It's not going to be looking good, especially if nobody else around him picks up any penalties.
Yeah, the only kind of solace that he has here is that the gap to Galindo behind is 2.5 seconds, so it shouldn't be too hard to extend that. That means he will get at least a minimum of P4 if nothing crazy happens here. But remember, if we have any incidents here, if we do get a safety car somewhere throughout this second half of the race, then Dimas has a big problem along the likes of Galanay, Vaso, Flack, and Piaseczki. Speaking of Vaso, though, remember he was in P4 when they made the pit stops as he picks up another time penalty for track limits. Vaso was right up there with Whitler, stopped a lap later. But look how far behind he is now. He is now over 7 seconds behind the back of Dimas, where before the pit stops, he was ahead of him. Of course, Vaso had that front wing end plate damage. I wonder if they have repaired it, but I don't think they would have, because that means changing a front wing is going to cost him even more time, and indeed, he still has that broken front wing end plate. But in turn, because of that, he's losing quite a bit of time on track, with Flack now breathing down his neck, so it will be a very tough race for him, and I don't think he will be scoring all too many points here tonight with those penalties he's found as well. Now let's look at all those penalties so I have a good view of those. It's 3 seconds for the likes of Dimas, Galanay, Flack, and Piaseczki, and the only man that's picked up 2 track limit warnings and penalties, Steven Vaso, 6 seconds to his name.
Yeah, unfortunately for Vaso, it was all looking on the up after qualifying. Of course, he is 4th in the drivers' standings after a spectacular second place last time out in Belgium. But unfortunately for him, it's not to be here in the Lone Star State. And it just was all after that lap 1 incident. It just seemed to all kick off up at turn 11. Just Kokeni being rotated in front of the field. I wouldn't be surprised if he potentially suffered some minor damage, not any visual damage, but enough for the car to potentially feel it through some of the corners, maybe some light green wing damage, and lose a little bit of aero balance. But unfortunately for him, he has just fallen backwards as well in terms of this race too. As Francesco Largo gets overtaken by Zalan Bieda, the first switch at the front of the field, as Tomasetto Alea has now caught up to the back of these hard runners. He's already made his way through on Valentino Labella. And of course, here as well, Myth, Tomasetto can use these drivers now as a little bit of rolling roadblocks to the likes of Koya, Vidler and Dimas behind, and maybe extend his gap that little bit more over the chasing pack. So he can use this quite nicely and potentially extend that gap to 2.5, maybe 3 seconds.
Yeah, the main thing here is just to overtake a car at a time at your DRS zones. He has managed to do so the first time he's got DRS. This will be the second time he has DRS. He's using as much battery as he can. He will have to get past the Ferrari of Abe Gobadi, puts it on the inside of the Ferrari man, and he has managed to get through. Now finds himself in P4 behind Gabor Xontos. That's the next target on his list. Whitler still hasn't broken the DRS barrier onto Labella, but will have DRS in the next section, because we can only imagine he closes down that gap to less than a second in that twisty first sector, and he has done so already. Look at how much time he gains. He's gained over a second over the course of 4 or 5 corners, so that is pretty crazy indeed, and it shows how much stronger those new hard tires are compared to the drivers that start on the hards 15 laps ago. Now here we go once more then for Tomasetto Alea. Can he get past Gabor Xontos? It looks like the gap is too much. Lago has traded places with Peter again. There comes Gabor Xontos as well, trying to go around the inside. And now this is chance for Alea. Can he move round the outside? He's going to try at least to put his car on the outside, put it back, make a big dive on the inside, and it looks like it just manages to work. He will have to go around the outside here, has that superior grip, and has gone past Beater here. Very nice move by Alea. He did exactly what he had to do, and he is now ahead of them. Whitler has managed to dispatch Labella already. They're now all in that same DRS train, so Alea has to dispatch these next 2 cars as quickly as he can, because otherwise Whitler will be within DRS range once more, and we will have a fight for a race win later on.
Yeah, we certainly will, as Daniel Koya now goes for a move on Valentino Labella. Was contact between the Haas driver and the Aston Martin man as they now make their way down the hill, and Koya's been able to make his way through. Of course, Vidler, he was able to make his way past Labella. He just wasn't able to do so against Abe Gabadi on the run to turn 1. So that's given Tomasetto Alea a little bit more breathing room now. The fact he's got past Gabor Xontos, and I think this gap is going to extend ever so slightly between, of course, the McLaren and the Aston Martin driver. Of course, so far for Tomasetto, last time out was his best result of the season in the opening 2 rounds, a 5th place finish in Belgium. But here in Texas, he's looking for something bigger, potentially better, as he looks to the inside there on Tomasetto Alea. Pajecki's now on 6 seconds. Vidler able to get past Dave Gabadi, and that gap between the pair fighting for this race victory at the moment. Victor Vidler, 1.6 seconds off Tomasetto, so he's actually been able to find some time. But with the fact that the likes of these drivers on the hards are staying out, I'm expecting now that gap to extend as he looks to the inside of Zalan Bieda, but isn't able to get that move done, and that's a crucial missed opportunity for Victor Vidler through this final sector.
Yeah, this is going to cost him more and more time, also because we're around the mark where the hard runners are going to dive into pit lane. They stay out for at least an extra lap, but Whitler still has to get past 3 of the drivers as Labella is now in. That's going to cue the other drivers likely to come in at the end of the next lap. As we see in the background, he's starting to make a move on the Alpine man and has gone through, but still has to overtake Xontos and Lago. Lago's now dropped back more than a second behind Alea, who's now going to pull away quite a bit as Whittler is pretty much stuck behind the Red Bull man in that first sector. So I think at the end of this, Max, Elia will have a bigger lead than he had before, which was around those 2 seconds. Behind him, Kyer still has to get past Peter, so that's one hurdle he has to take. Dimas still has to overtake Gobadi, so he's not making too much progress either yet. But on the other hand, it is good news for him that Galindo is down by about 3 seconds. So once that penalty is applied for those track limits, he will either just or just not stay ahead of them. Lago has managed to fall back. Well, he has fallen back a little bit. And it looks like Whittler in that DRS, Max, has not managed to get past as Vaso picks up yet another time penalty. That's his 3rd penalty for track limits tonight.
Yeah, a disaster for Vaso once again. And yeah, Victor Fittler was watching all the way down that back straight. Just wasn't seem like he was finding any time at all against Gabor Shontos. And now he's stuck behind him even longer through this final part of the lap. And Largo darts into pit lane. So he's coming into the pits now. He'll do 11 laps on those mediums and try and claw his way back up through the field. The Bella came in the lap before as we see Fiddler all over the back of Gabor Jontos. But once again, not close enough to get that move done. Being stuck behind Jontos here has cost him around about 1.4 seconds to Tomasetto Alea. And that is absolutely crucial in terms of this race. Are you really thinking now here, if this race stays green all the way to the end, Tomasetto Alea will take a very dominant victory, just like we've seen so far this season from the man second place in the second place in this current race. Well, of course, yet to make his pit stop, Gabor Shontos, and it's going to break that streak from the Red Bull. Tomasetto Alea will be the first different winner of the season, but Fiddler, he'll surely make his way through this time around.
Yeah, he surely has to make his way through, and he will do so indeed. He's already alongside him as we enter the braking zone, and now the McLaren man is indeed ahead of Jontos. If we look further down the line, Lago has come out in P13. He's now going to get past Dennis Langrock, but the gap up ahead, 7.7 seconds. Then it's 2 seconds that Ralston is behind Flack. There's another almost 2 second gap from Galanet to Galindo, and then it's 3 further seconds before we get to Dimas from Kokeni. So there's a lot of time to overcome by the medium runners, and only around 10 laps to do so. I think Jontos will come into pit lane now. Indeed, he does do so. So he will need to push 9 laps on those mediums, but he will have to overcome at least 13 to 14 seconds. Where we thought the pit lane time loss would be around 18.6, it seems to be a little bit lower. Vassos picked up a time penalty for speeding in the pit lane, so he is going to retire. A horrid race for him after that front wing and plate damage in lap 1. Labala has now set the fastest lap time, so that's another thing to watch out for, as Jontos has now dropped back out behind Bieder and Labella, but at least is ahead only just of Ave Gobadi. But the gap, 1.4 seconds to Bieder, needs to close that down in Sector 1. Otherwise, it's going to be a tough ask for him to even get back in there. But I think for Jontos, as well for Lago, Max, it'll be very hard to pick up more than 3 or 4 points here tonight.
Yeah, I think it certainly will be. I mean, Largo's found already a second onto Jensen Ralston in the course of this lap. So potentially could find that little bit more time as the laps tick by. Those tyres get older for Ralston. We just need to wait and see. And for Victor Fiddler at the front of the field, he's dropped about half a second to Tomasetto Alea since he overtook, of course, Gabor Shontos. So for Victor Fiddler, he's now going to be looking in these mirrors from Daniel Koya and Alexander Dimas. But these medium runners, they've tried the alternate strategy, and at the minute it's not going to look like it's working. Of course, once they catch up to Ralston, they will at least get up to 7th place. But of course, they need to get past the Williams driver, which is easier said than done. And this race really is all about these two strategies potentially merging, but I feel like we're not going to get that battle for the race lead. It's all just going to be looking a little bit further back at potentially this battle for second and the battle for the lower ends of the points.
Yeah, I think as some people in the chat have been saying as well, when someone is brave and goes to the soft, it's a foregone conclusion. The same thing can be said. The only thing that really anything is going to change is if we're going to have a safety car. As we see, Beisner has now retired, and it looks like Piasecki has done the same, as we now find him in pit lane. Langrock has come into the pits as well. He is now switched over to the mediums. I think he is still hoping for that safety car so that anything can be saved for him, as we're now going to watch Jensen Rausen, who's gone very close to the back of Casper Flack, and he's looking to overtake him here on the backstretch, using quite a bit of that ERS. Wants to make a move down the inside, wants to go for a send, but decides against it. There's not enough space to put that car through there. Gallané is ahead of that. Then it's Galindo who's close to the back of Kokeni. Dimas, Kaya, and Whitler are still stuck in place, as Vastos now left the session 2. Tomasetto Elias still finds himself up nicely by 3 seconds, as it's in the meantime Gabor Jontos who's managed to get past the Alpine of Peter, fighting back quite harshly there. But in Sector 3 now, it is over for him, and the Red Bull man is ahead. But they will be fighting and squabbling for points. It's 5.2 seconds from the back of Lago to Rausen, and that is the first thing they need to overcome with 7 laps left to go.
Yeah, they'll need to overcome a big gap to the rest of the field in front. And now Shontos, of course, making his way past Bieda, puts one car less in between himself and championship rival Francesco Largo. No one really at the top of the standings are scoring any big points, and this will slash that gap between Elia and Shontos completely in half. And as things finish as they were, Elia will actually move up to 2nd place in the standings, and he will be, if my maths is correct, only 10 points behind. So some big moments in the championship at this current rate. No, scratch that, 8 points behind. So it will slash Shontos' lead in half to the field behind. And this is certainly a big moment in the championship after a disappointing qualifying for the Hungarian and also Francesco Largo. They've not really been able to make amends just yet. That gap 4.4 between Largo and the Bella. Talking about them two, side by side between the pair. The Bella's forced Largo off the road. There's a little bit of contact between the pair. And the V-Carb just elects to sit in behind as Jensen Rausen now goes for a move on Casper. Flack to the inside. He went into turn 15. Is he going to be able to pull this one off now? Round the outside of the triple right-hander. There's contact between these pair. Now it's both the V-Carbs getting into a little bit of contact. And Jensen Rausen just has to back out, or does he? Still looking to the inside through the final corner as Flack just defends it aggressively, but still there side by side. And finally, the V-Carb is able to pull out in front and potentially stay ahead as we now hit the brakes up into turn 1. Rausen tries to brake later, not late enough. And crucially as well, further back, the top two in the championship are now 11th and 12th on the road.
Yeah, great fighting with Flag and Rausen. Sadly for Rausen, he couldn't get past that Racing Bull car, but some good fighting, and that is what we want to see, as Langrock has set the fastest lap time in a 1:33.1. But we find Langrock all the way at the back of the grid, 17.5 seconds behind Ave Gobadi. Good news for Jontas is that he's managed to get past Peter. Labella has managed to leapfrog Lago again, but the fact that they're fighting so much is not good for any of them, because that means it's going to be more difficult to get to the back of the drivers up ahead. They will surely get to the back of Rausen, Flack and Gallané, but then to get to Galindo, that gap is another 3.6 seconds, and that might be too much to overcome. But now Labella does stay ahead of Lago and Jontos. No swapping around there. So it will be another 3, maybe even 4 laps before they get to the back of Flack and Rausen and Gallané. But looks like for either Labella, Lago or Jontos, P7 is the most they can get here tonight.
Yeah, it does seem that way, that P7 is going to be the best these medium runners can get. And if you're Francesco Largo, you want to be the one that gets that P7 ahead of Gabor Jontos, or at least a position ahead of Gabor Jontos. So as we make our way out of that final corner, it doesn't seem like anything's happening at the moment at the front of this field, and it is all now just about these dying embers of the race. Of course, 6 laps to go, and now They really need to put their foot down to the likes of Labella, Largo, Shontos, and Bieda if they want to catch up to the back of this train. Do we say it seems like a certain? They are gaining quite at a rate of knots at the moment, but as Casper Flack now picks up another 3-second penalty, so that will definitely drop him down to the back of this field. It's certain they'll catch up, but maybe overtaking Ralston, especially with the fact he's got DRS of the 2 cars in front. That's going to be a bit of a different question as Shontos looked for a move potentially there to the inside of Francesco Largo, and he's got a really nice exit as well out of turn 11, so he could now see a move from the Red Bull on to the V-Club. The 2 sister teams will be scrapping all the way down into turn 12. Are we going to see a lunge from Shontos? Actually, no. Largo's been forced to attack on Valentino Labella. The best way to defend is to attack, but he's potentially not even going to get this move done as he looks to the outside line. This might invite Gabor Shontos to look to the inside. It does. He's going to be on the outside for the next left-hander, and he's just going to have to sit behind. This is contact with Bieda. He's going to look to try and get the exit, but doesn't do so. But for Francesco Largo, that's the first real big scare from Gabor Shontos behind. Was forced into attack, weren't able to get it done. And Shontos nearly said, thank you very much, I'll capitalise on that.
Yeah, indeed, a very good attempt by Shontos, but it's also so nice to see the lines that he's driving. It's so different compared to all the other drivers that we see around the grid, and it looks to be much cleaner than everyone else out there. So far, Largo has managed to halt that advance of Shontos, at least for the time being. Labella's still 2.8 seconds behind, so it's going to become more and more difficult to get to the back of Jensen Ralston as the tire life in those mediums is starting to fade now as well. But as soon as Shontos gets past Largo, then getting past Labella will only be a matter of time, so he will need to do so quickly, and for now he's not too close behind as we head towards turn 11, so he will have to wait yet another lap and has to save that battery enough as it's now, well, it's already on 84%, so it's quite a good move by him. Largo's now much closer to Labella up ahead, so I think Largo instead has decided, okay, it's time to go. We have to overtake that Haas now, and he is indeed on the inside, and he's gone past. Good move by Largo, who's moved back into the points as Avgo Body now gets past the Alpine of Zalan Bader.
Well, does he? This concept between the pair is a real big send from Abe Gabadi, and Bieda was really tire hooking him on the exit just to keep the car on the road as Koya now picks up a 3-second time penalty. That's confirmed Victor Bittler for second place. It's more contact between the Alpine and the Ferrari as they exit out of turn 15 as they're still side by side. Oh, and Bieda's been sent round. He somehow collected the car back into a straight line before it's done a full 360, but that has brought an end to that battle. It was very aggressive. Very hard racing, lots of contact there, and for Zalan Bieda, he came out the victim. He came out worse of the pair, and unfortunately, that for him, that is not going to be any points scored in this one. And talking about points being scored at the moment here, Myth, Francesco Largo 2.3 back with 4 to go. It's not looking good in terms of catching up and overtaking Ralston. He's the only saving grace of these medium runners are the fact that Galladay and Flack have got time penalties, but this strategy has not worked at all.
Now, we do have to, of course, remember that they were coming from the back of the grid. They had to try something different, and it looks like that has not worked at least enough or as much as they would have liked. Further up ahead, that penalty from Kyer is good news for both Dimas and Kokeni, because for Dimas it means if he gets the overtake done on the track onto Kyer, that means he gets a podium. For Kokeni, if he can get closer to the likes of Kyer and Dimas, he will inherit that podium as the penalties are applied, but he currently is about 4 seconds behind, Kyer himself, so he needs to gain another second if he wants to pick up a podium here tonight. Looks like Tomasetto Elia and indeed Victor Whittler have found their places on the podium. We just have to see who gets that final step on the podium later on down the line. Ralston and Flack are still stuck behind Galladay. Largo is seemingly around that same mark behind Ralston of about 2.2, 2.3 seconds. And it's going to be also tough to overcome it. Let's see how much life there still is in those mediums. The gap's now 2.5. Let's see how it is when we approach turn 11.
Think how this is going to look out now as Of course, not many laps remaining in this race. It's still certainly all to play for. Anything can happen in terms of these battles for potential points at the back of this field of the medium runners, or for this battle for the podium. Some contact could occur, and that could see somebody just shoot their way up into a potential second place spot. These podiums could now be inherited. Of course, 3 laps to go here in Texas. And as we see, Francesco Largo still about 2.5 seconds back. The Vidler still 2.5 seconds back on Tomasetto Alea, but Casper Flack now squabbling away with Jeremy Gallinay. Same with Largo and Valentino Labella. This could potentially, it would have helped if the medium runners weren't scrapping. It would have helped the cars behind as they're still side by side at the front. You can see it from the offboard as Flack is able to potentially now get past Gallinay. Largo and Labella still side by side on the exit of 15. That's invited Shontos to now potentially hold it round the outside of the Haas driver, who's had to let off the throttle ever so slightly to not go into Francesco Largo. He doesn't, and Shontos not able to capitalise on all of that. Gallinay able to stay in front of Casper Flack. Of course, Ralston will just be sitting behind, waiting in the wings. 2 laps to go here in Texas. And so far, is Labella going to go for that move up into turn 1? He is, and he's going to be able to get it done. And here comes Shontos sending it to the inside. That was a bold move to the inside line from the championship leader, but he's just not going to be able to get it done.
Well, he's still trying to stay side by side as Langrock has retired from this race, leaving 14 drivers that are going to reach the finish line in 2 laps' time. Shontos definitely has a little bit more tire life in it compared to Largo and Labella, as he stopped a little bit later, but he will have to overtake them out there on track, and they also have to realize P10 is going to be the most they can get, perhaps a P9 with the penalties from either Gallinay or Flack if they manage to fight ever so more. Dimas is starting to drop behind, further behind Kyra as well, but he needs to make sure that he stays ahead those 3 crucial seconds of Tomas Kokeni, which currently sits at 2.6, so that is not good news for him. Further down the line, Flack and Gallinay are now fighting tooth and nail for that P7. It's inviting Jensen Ralston to come through, and he's gone route. Ralston's gone ahead. Gallinay and Flack are still fighting. This might push them back all the way into the claws of Labella and Largo, and let those be the 2 drivers that also have gotten the penalties. So that means all of a sudden a P8 is on the cards for Largo and Shontos.
It certainly is on the cards for them as we now start this final lap of the United States Grand Prix. And so far, Tomasetto Alea has dominated at the front of the field. I don't think we're going to see a switch there between, of course, Vidler and Tomasetto, with it being 2 seconds. And the Aston Martin, he took pole position with a late lap to the top without a lap time on the board, and he's soaked up that pressure ever since. And now for Casper Flack and Gallinay, they're now falling into the clutches of the drivers behind. Kokeni looks destined for a 4th place finish at the moment, as he is 2.5 seconds behind Alexander Dimas. But are any moves going to be made, potentially from Koya onto Victor Vidler or into Alexander Dimas? No, it just doesn't seem like they will happen. But as we make our way down that back straight a little bit further back, are we going to see that move from Francesco Largo? Of course, this is crucial few points in the championship. He's able to get past Labella, who's going to look to the outside line. Is the V-carb as he tries to get this move done. He'll be late onto the brakes. He's got to have the better exit as he now tries to force the better around the long way through turn 13, and he's got the move done nicely there. He's going to defend the inside as well, but at the front of the field, after when all the pressure was on in qualifying, he was able to deliver. In this race, he got through the skirmishes of lap 1, and he dominated from the very front. Tomasetto Alea wins the Texas Grand Prix. He wins in the Lone Star State. It's Victor Vidler in second. Daniel Koya rounds out a double podium for the Aston Martin outfit. Kokeni 4th, followed by Galindo, Dimas, Ralston, Largo in 8th, Labella 9th, Shontos picking up the last point from Gabadi, Gallinay, Flack, and then it was also Bieda at the very back there. But domination at the front of the field from Tomasetto Alea. He wins here in Kota. What a performance that was throughout the whole evening. And he becomes our 2nd different winner of the season.
He becomes the second different winner of the season, leading pretty much start to finish after a couple positions swapped, of course, with Kaya, who we find in P3 after that penalty was applied. But more crucial, Dimas lost a little bit of time in that final sector, dropping him to P6 as Galindo is up by 100 on him after that 3 seconds were applied. But here we go then. Here we have our full race results with Alaya first ahead of Whitler and Kaya. Then it's Tomas Kokeni, Carlos Galindo 5th, 6th place for Dimas, was really hoping to get more there. Rausen in 7th, and it's only 8th for Francesco Lago, but after starting P14, that's not too bad. Labella in 15th, Janto still points, starting from the back of the grid after not setting a lap in qualifying. And outside of points, we find Eve Gobadi, Jeremy Gallané, Kasper Flag, Zalan Bieder, Danis Langrock, Lucas Beisner, Igor Pizeshki, Steven Vasso, and Boba, of which the final 5 have retired from this session. But Max, that was quite the race indeed. But I have to say though, at least for the front of the grid, that turn 1 was oh so crucial. Ahead, well, along with the fight in turn 11, basically after that, the Aston Martins already secured a race win, looking at it from hindsight.
Yeah, it very much was. It was pretty much won on lap 1, and the podium was pretty much set out from lap 1 after the damage to Vasso, Kokeni dropping down the field. It pretty much meant that first lap was very crucial, and both the Aston Martins got through it unscathed. It was unfortunate for Koya to pick up both that penalty and the undercut to occur to him, because he potentially could have got that second place, but you got to think. It was absolute domination from Alea. He could have easily fell back into the traps of Victor Vidler, managed the traffic perfectly, was able to build that gap once again, and then from that point onwards, he could somewhat cruise home. He could cruise the car to the line and just bring it home in one piece, and it just showed how getting pole position, staying out of early trouble, and just being able to stretch those legs ever so slightly and having the first choice in the pit lane can make all the stars align, and you can win the race by a little while. And in terms of F1 sim racing, and especially PSGL F3, winning by 2-3 seconds and keeping that through the course of a race is domination. It is just sheer domination at the front of the field, that you are untouchable in that race. And it's exactly what he's done, and he's taken second place in the standings with it.
Yeah, great effort by him. And if you now think here, watching this on YouTube, you think I can do this better, our mid-season signups have now just opened. So if you want to be within those fights every Thursday evening, make sure that you sign up, get placed in one of the rankings, and who knows, maybe in a couple of seasons, or maybe even this season time, you will find yourself being featured on one of the streams of either F2, 3, or 4. For the racing, at least, that was that. We already see Victor Whitler waiting in the waiting room. So I think without any further ado, let's move over to our interviews and move in Victor Whitler. And there we have him. He started quite well, Victor Whitler, had a tough little bit of fight with his compatriot in Steven Vassell that we'll hear about later, but he picked up a podium, and not just a P3, he picked up a P2. Great work!
Thank you.
Well, I think the key here to this race was all to be found in lap 1. Turn 1 and turn 11. Can you take us through?
I mean, yeah. Lap 1 was kind of chaos. Turn one was less chaotic, but I think the fight between Steven and the Williams through the first and second sector was really bad. And then obviously into turn 11, that was they came together. Yeah, the Alpine came across, and I went through. And then obviously Steven as well. He had damage, so I could just cruise into P3, which was lucky for me after my really bad quali.
Yeah, and then we saw with the pit stops coming in, a couple of drivers tried to do something else with the undercut. The undercut was very powerful here tonight. Did you think there was ever anything more on the cards this race, that you were able to get to the back of Tomasetto Alaya, or was he just too far ahead?
I think there was definitely more to have. I messed up my setup a bit for this race, which I think cost me 2 or 3 times a lap, which was unfortunate, but that's a mistake on my own part. But so there was definitely more to gain, especially considering I definitely should have been on pole unless I invalidated my final lap, and yeah, there was a lot more to have. But I'm still happy with P2 after starting P7.
Yeah, I think you can definitely be very happy with that result indeed. Now, another thing that I want to look at, we saw that quite a few drivers have picked up penalties for track limits. That could be said about your teammate, could also be said about Dimas and Kaya, the drivers that you were battling with. Were you on any strikes?
I was on 2 warnings, like at the half point. So I kept clean for the rest of the race.
Wow, that must have been absolutely nerve-wracking for you indeed. Max, any questions from your end?
Yeah, of course, congratulations, Victor, on the podium. Of course, your first points of the season. How does it feel to get your campaign off really after 2 tricky races with a podium here in round 3?
Yeah, I'm happy. I was hoping for the win considering last week's restart, what I should have won. But I'm still happy with P2 after getting very unlucky in both races at the start. So it's a nice way to start off, and hopefully I can start on my title campaign now.
Yeah, hopefully you certainly can. And of course, next week we move on to Monaco, a race certainly about qualifying. How are you feeling around there? I know you're part of Venturi, so you've got arguably one of the Monaco masters now, Gio, there as well. So is he giving you any tips? How are you feeling at Monaco?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna look for tips from him, but I quite enjoy Monaco, to be honest. So well, I hope for a good result. Hopefully I can win there.
Of course, the mandatory 2-stop as well will play into facts there. Of course, you probably haven't thought too much about Monaco just yet, but what are your aims, of course, with that 2-stop as well, to just try and get another podium and just go from there?
I mean, I'm aiming for the win.
Fair enough. But yeah, congratulations on the second place, and yeah, hopefully we see you back next week as the race winner.
Thank you.
All right, so that was Victor Riddler. He placed in second here tonight. Hadn't picked up any points so far this season, but now picks up a nice 12 points. It's going to propel him into the top 10. Our race winner for tonight, Tomasetto Elia, is indeed going to get into second place, picking up those 16 points. Already had 8, will be on 24. But Piasecki didn't pick up any points, he retired. Vassal didn't pick up any points as he retired. Francesco Lago in second has only picked up 3 points, so will be on 21. Dimas, who was on 12 before, has now picked up only 6, so he will be on 18. And I think, yeah, Landrock has also retired, so that means that Jantos is still in the lead. He's picked up either 2 or 1, wasn't too sure about that.
Point.
He picked up 1 point, so he will be on 33. So he sees that gap come down a little bit, but still has a nice 9-second lead up ahead there as we are going to prepare for Monaco, as you mentioned, Max. Yeah, next race, a couple of drivers will be dreading that indeed. And the other thing that will be interesting, what you already mentioned, that 2-stop mandatory pit stop. That certainly is going to make things more interesting.
It certainly is indeed. It's going to be a very, very interesting race. And of course, quali, it is the most crucial qualifying of the season. You think even with that 2-stop, it's not easy at all to overtake at Monaco. And of course, with that 2-stop being in factor as well, of course, strategies could be quite different. That could be the only somewhat saving grace for some of these drivers if they have a bad qualifying. But still, it's going to be difficult. I'm expecting a few safety cars. It is Monaco at the end of the day. It is the hardest track to keep it out the walls of, hardest track on the game as well. So, yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting indeed. And we could get a few surprises. There are some people you may not have seen be quick in the opening 3 rounds. Given Monaco, they could be instantly battling for pole position. It's a circuit where you need such a unique characteristic and a unique driving style to master that if you can get it right, if you can hook everything up consistently around there, you certainly could see yourself within a shout of winning because it's such a difficult track. And if you've done a lot of hours on it compared to others who probably haven't done, you certainly could be really within a shout of taking, if not a shock pole or race victory, or really carry on your championship charge with a victory.
Yeah, we saw as well how crucial that qualifying session is. Our championship leader with one race, 1 and 2, qualified at the back of the grid here tonight. Still managed to pick up a point, but you see how difficult it is for everyone to just fly through the pack as it is so closely grouped together. And the man that was 8th in the standings now picked up a race win and suddenly finds himself in P2. That's how close it is, especially if in that top 6, 3 of those drivers retired in this race, and Ralston, who was also involved in that lap 1 contact, who dropped from 3 all the way down to 9th. There was also a podium on the cards for him, but now he scores a lot less and still stays in those lower regions. So it certainly at least shows that where we expected the championship fight perhaps to go between Dimas Lago and Jantos, they definitely seem to be the 2 stronger drivers coming out of round 1 and 2. But now that we've seen this race here tonight, Max, I think we have a couple new contenders mixing themselves up in that fight, and that is going to be also nice to see from round 4 onwards all the way down to round 11 of Abu Dhabi, with still so many races to go. I think it's at least opened up our anticipation for the season a little bit more, and it's going to make it also more exciting.
It certainly is. It's going to be a very interesting season to the end, and I think we are going to have a very, very close field heading into the last few rounds of Saudi Arabia, Brazil, and Abu Dhabi. So, yeah, it could potentially be wrapped up before the finale. It could be going down to the wire with 5, 6 drivers in contention into the finale. I think this championship could certainly constantly keep swinging into different drivers' favours. It all depends on how comfortable they feel around some circuits, and of course these next few rounds are critical, especially going into such a long break for the Christmas break. I feel like they are very critical in terms of if you don't perform well when you're in that championship fight. So say like a Largo, a Jantos has a few poor rounds just before Mexico, and Mexico's a poor round as well. You've then got 2-3 weeks off, and that then plays on your mind. You can't instantly just back it up with a good result. You've got to sit there, reflect, and it plays on your mind ever so slowly, and it could really ruin your confidence heading into that final 3 rounds of the season. So yeah, all these next rounds I think are very, very crucial when it comes down to driver confidence in this championship. Because if it all goes wrong, it certainly could just carry on that downward spiral.
Yeah, you really just want to make sure that when we go to that long Christmas break, that you have a nice gap towards the drivers behind, so that's already down to just a handful of drivers, because otherwise, for those final couple races, it's going to be absolute chaos. For tonight, though, we've now seen a nice conclusion in this rerun here at Texas. Next week, as we said, we will be at Monaco. I just want to give a quick shout out to the PSGL team for providing us with those sponsor boards, the sponsor boards that you're going to see from this week onwards as well in all the other streams. So thank you so much for that. I hope you guys were able to see them when we were having the race and the qualifying session earlier on. For us, Max, I think this is it. Exciting race. I think that's a good summary for it, and I think I'm for one glad that I was able to be here for the rerun, as I wasn't there last week.
Yes, same here as well. So I think I'm very glad to see that. Keeps us up to date with everything in terms of the championship, and yeah, I think it's going to be it was an exciting race. I think we're going to have an exciting season, and you never know. We could put on a classic on Monaco. It can happen. You never know. So yeah, Monaco next. Could potentially be quite a procession. Could just be down to qualifying, but we'll have to wait and see.
Not with those 2 stoppers, that won't be. We will see a lot of different strategies with one of the races to watch out for. We go to the Principality of Monaco next week, so make sure you are here with us once more when we go for the streams. F3 you can find here at 7 p.m. British Standard Time next Thursday, with the other races, the F2 and the F4s, starting at 8 p.m. British Standard Time. Of course, it's another hour added if you are living in mainland Europe. We will be taking our leave for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week in Monaco.